Before we dive in, I want to give a big thank you to the amazing supporters you see on the screen right now. You make videos like this possible. If you'd like to support the channel and keep content like this coming, consider joining that channel membership, as every little bit goes a long way. Today we are covering Christo Garcia, the creator of My Swing Evolution, a YouTube channel with millions of views built around the idea of rebuilding the swing in the image of Ben Hogan. But Christo's story is unique. He comes from the entertainment industry with acting credits in several feature films as seen on his IMDb page. He even portrays Ben Hogan himself in a Golf Channel special. Originally a recreational golfer, Christo turned frustration with his own game into a full-blown transformation, diving deep into Hogan's swing mechanics and developing what many now know as an inside over-the-top swing model. So how does a recreational golfer recreate his life and career through a motion many instructors call a mistake? And more importantly, does it actually work? In this video series, we break down popular golf instruction by looking at the positives, the negatives, who it may or may not work for, and whether the instructor actually does what they teach. Every theory review I do is based on your votes and your comments, so if you want someone analyzed, let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure Christo has helped a lot of golfers. He built a loyal audience and a brand around rebuilding his swing in the image of Ben Hogan, but in today's age, content-driven branding and deep reach into the golf world, is this method really applicable to you? Is Christo's move something you should be chasing? Today, we find out. So we're going to look at Christo's swing from 2012 and then from most recently to see some differences, to see what his natural tendencies are, and is he really changing his swing that much? Is he doing what he's telling others to do? But before we get there, we're going to do our positives and negatives. I want this to be as fair as possible. Here's the upside for the swing method. This pattern of the golf swing will naturally reduce a hook. That over-the-top move takes a club path slightly left, encouraging a controllable fade. So if you do have issues with a hook, this might work for you. The deep takeaway can feel more connected for players who like width and space in the backswing, and he gets excellent compression because he rotates through impact, does not necessarily flip or stall, although he does have excessive hand manipulation, and we will go over that in his swing analysis. And it is a repeatable pattern only if you have a strong body control and good timing. And again, we're going to look at that timing. But now we go into the negatives, and in my opinion, there's some pretty big ones. The deep and steep combo can put serious stress on the lead shoulder and trail elbow, especially if your mobility is not great. The pattern is incredibly timing dependent depending on your body positioning. A minor stall or loss of tilt and you could be chunking it, or worse, slicing it in you know who on the fifth fairway. And for many amateurs, this pattern can create push fades, blocks, or big pulls because the face gets left behind. And it could be easy to get stuck. That deep takeaway can create zero room for the downswing if your hips don't clear. So if your body can take this swing, I think it might be a great fit, but it all comes down again to the tool of your body. Now let's go into the physical requirements or body types that this might work for. It could work for players with long torso to arm ratios, as it gives them more space to work through impact positions. You definitely need a highly mobile spine, because you must rotate your upper body to make sure that over the top is there. And because it needs precise sequencing, fast twitch athletes could benefit more from this type of move. Now, who this might hurt is golfers with tight hips or shoulders. You might get stuck and steep. Senior players might have an issue because the steepness can aggravate rotator cuffs and lead to early extension. And anyone with a dominant lower body who struggles to sync upper and lower halves might have some issues with this too. So the bottom line, if you're trying to decide if this works for you, you need mobility, control, and rotational awareness, or this pattern might not work for you. According to data from TrackMan and the PGA Tour ShotLink system, the average Tour Pro swings slightly inside to out about +1 to +3 degrees, but most don't take the club inside like Christo, then steepen it. On the contrary, that steep inside move, you'll see it maybe in 5 to 10% of players on tour, and usually as a secondary trait, not a primary swing identity. In order to do this, 3D studies show this pattern demands higher activation in the scapula, the traps, and triceps due to the arm lift and over-the-top move. It also creates more vertical swing plane at transition, which can lead to shoulder and neck stress. And there is a potential for players who swing this way to lose side bend early, which leads to shallower hip angles and reduced ground forces. So in terms of who should try this swing, I say everybody give it a try and give it a shot. But you might find the people that this works for are a natural fader of the ball and want to eliminate hooks. They might have strong rotation and consistent tilts, and they want to feel more connected in the backswing and can commit to turning hard through impact. Some people that this might not work for struggle with slices or a two-way miss. They can't maintain posture or tilt, and they need a simpler pattern that puts less stress on their body. So when I was cruising around Christo's page, I found this short and I want to watch it with you. And after we diagnose this swing from the short, we're actually going to compare his older swing to his newer swing to see if there's any changes that have occurred in the past 13 years. And then we're going to finish this off with my summary of the OTT, can this work for you, and my opinion of this whole method.
I actually first discovered these OTT principles doing the speed check. Okay. When I swung out, look how fast I can swing. 122, 116. Now if I get here, wow. 144. So I learned to continue to rotate. Now if I can have that same feeling when I'm swinging a golf club so I'm not muscling it, then I should be able to get a lot more distance. So. Nice shot. That's it right there. That's smash.
So we just watched this short of him describing a feel, and we clearly heard him say a feel. So this is his feel drill, and we can see that he takes that club back inside, and then all of a sudden we'll reroute this club, and the feeling of getting his hands much higher and feeling that over the top mover. We can indicate this by that steep club shaft, and we know this club is going to veer off in this territory and come over the top. Now, again, feel. Feel is not necessarily real. And if we back it up a few frames, we can see the other feel that he says that he is trying to avoid is coming more inside to out. And this has to do with speed of the club. But just remember, it's not club speed that matters, it's ball speed. Ball speed is more important than club speed. So always look at your ball speed. But let's take a look at this move. So here we have the hands going more down, and they do actually come from the inside out. As we can see, the big difference here, and the club will trail the other side. So you can see what he is trying to get away from and what he's trying to impart, two different sides of the circle. But what you'll be shocked to know is actually this inside move that he is trying to avoid looks more like his real swing. So let's go down to his real swing. We're going to diagnose his swing. We're actually going to put this one next to the real swing and see which one it looks more like. So we have our lines up, and I don't know if this is exactly down the line just because he does pull that right foot back to help him with the turn and getting that low takeaway. But to see how centered this setup is, we do our mellow yellow line right between the arches of the heels, and then we look at where the spine angle, which is Ivan red, and then the lower plane, upper plane line, which is Barney purple, where they intersect. And then you can see it's right about here. So it is fairly centered. So we'll give him that. It might be a little bit toe heavy, but you can see that this is a pretty upright setup. As a result, we get our hands a little bit higher, which will bring your plane lines closer together. So your two Barney purple lines get closer and closer the higher your plane becomes. Somebody with very low hands, we're going to have a bigger plane area to work with. This can come from different variables. You could have very short arms, your torso could be longer or shorter, so this is a very independent thing, which is why I say that no setup is exactly the same, because we're all so different in the way we're built. And it's nice with this video because we don't need a back brace line. We got the edge of the video to give us a back brace line, but if there was a back brace line, it'll be right there. So what we'll do is we'll keep that there just for giggles. But let's take this club back, and we can definitely see there is a lot of turn on the way back, which is good for him because it gets his club to be inside like he wants to feel. Now this is that inside before the over the top. But what we're going to look at is the path that the hands travel from midway point back. So let's draw a little circle around his hands here, and let's go straight to the top, and we can see that he does get his hands a little bit lower. Now we have to question, why does this occur? Now because we have a lot of turn initially, in order to release the pressure on the left side, it definitely helps releasing the pressure when you lose tilt. So if we look at the tilting of his shoulders, it is not going to be perpendicular to his spine, because if it were perpendicular to his spine, his hands would actually raise higher. So if you lower that left shoulder down so it's perpendicular to the spine, the difference would be the hands would be closer to his Barney purple line. So in other words, this spacing here in green would actually be up with his hands. So his hands would actually meet his Barney purple line. So it's not necessarily feeling his arms taking it up, although that might be the feel. The bigger picture is taking control, which is the body rotation and the loss of shoulder tilt. Now we definitely see him doing a stacking motion on the left side because that accentuated bend of his left knee, and that'll load up the weight. Now it all depends on how you're built and can you get to these positions. So far this really works for him, but the moment of truth is coming on down. So now we're going to draw a circle around where his hand is here, and we're going to do this in our Gumby green. And as we come on down, we can see that the first move is definitely moving down and down and down. So know that he would like to feel his hands go from low to high, and I'm sure it does. Now I know technically he started lower in his backswing, then came back above where it was at the start of his swing, but you have to think about why this occurs. At impact, your hands do arrive higher naturally because of the turning and tilting motion, plus shaft droop makes a difference. But if you look at his spine angle, we're going to draw a big green line at impact. We can see that we're losing spine angle at impact, so we're not really staying against that back brace line. Now some of this could be camera illusion. If you were to move a lot to your left side, you actually get further away from the lens, so you do typically lose some spacing. But if that occurs, at least you'll be staying in your posture when you do this. But because we don't stay in our posture, this shows a little bit of inefficient ground sequencing. And when you do lose your posture, your hands will raise up, because when you are spinning in a circle, your arms, where they're connected to that circle, so your shoulders are connected here to that circle because of the shoulder joint. So naturally, as you spin, your hands want to raise higher to get back to where that center of that connection joint is. A lot of this has been played from the rotation. So the more rotation you can have, the hands will raise up, which also contributes to an inside over the top move, but it's something that happens naturally. So we're going to play the exaggerated into out motion and the exaggerated out to in motion next to his real swing in slow motion. And I want you to tell me, which one does his regular swing look more like? The one that he's describing that he does not want to feel, or the one that he's describing that he does want to feel? So the one on the left is the exaggerated outside to in motion. The one on the right is his actual swing. So if you look at the arm positions already, we don't see that carry over from the feeling that he wants students to feel, like this is going from in to out. Right now, he's still fairly in on his real swing versus out on his practice swing. As we come on down into transition, that first move, you can see the one on the right side, his actual swing, the arms drop down. The one on the left side, they go significantly outside to in, and specifically right in this position here. We could see right there is the picture that you just need to get across. Left is feel, right is real. The one on the right side is actually dropping. The one on the left side is actually throwing. And we see this is right at impact. Look how much more rotation the one on the left side had versus his real swing. So to get that club head speed up, to get the speed stick to move, he moved his body so much more than he actually does during his swing. So there could be just a slight misinterpretation of what creates power. And as we come on through, we can definitely see the rotation here. Look at the one on the left side, body's completely facing the target. One on the right side, body is squaring up to the target, eventually just from cause and effect. Okay, so now we have the other feeling. One on the left side is where he's feeling that club go more inside. The one on the right side is his actual swing. So we see the top position looks a little bit closer to his real top position. And as we come on down into impact, we can see the hands here are doing similar motions. They're getting closer to the body. They're moving down. So the one that he is actually trying to shy away from, he actually does it more so in his golf swing. And right after impact, we can see similar rotations versus his real swing. This just just goes to show that sometimes feel is just not real, and it can be misinterpreted versus what is actually occurring in someone's golf swing. And then to base a method from those feels, that's where some issues could arise. I found a great 5-iron that he just flushed, so we can know that this is a great swing, a great result. Let's take a look at the cause and effect, and immediately we see a slightly different setup than we did with the driver. We don't see that right foot back. Now, I don't know if he was doing that in that lesson, but we know that this is more of a neutral setup. We see those plane lines are more spaced out than they were for the driver. We see that he's in a pretty centered position because the spine angle intersects that lower plane line and his arches of the heel. So we know this is a pretty balanced starting position. Now we take a look at some evidence that does occur that coincides with the driver swing we just looked at, and we do see those hands stay on that plane line. So the hands don't go inside the plane line, they stay on it. The club head does veer below the plane line. Now immediately we start to see that loss of the shoulder tilt because the left shoulder is working its way up to accommodate this, again, to get that deeper turn that he would like. So the turn depth happens pretty much immediately right there. He's still pretty centered to his center of his chest, which is great. We get to that secondary plane line and we can see it basically matches where his shoulder tilt is. So the shoulder tilt does again raise up to accommodate this, which will also allow him to turn more and get that pressure loaded on the left side like we see here. So this is a pretty solid swing because we haven't lost our spine angle, which is the key, although the shoulders are tilting a little bit differently than some other tour professionals or some other good players. Now naturally, if you don't compensate, I've seen people that lose shoulder tilt that get their hands up here to compensate that, to get that centeredness feel, but because he is pretty centered still, he doesn't have to fight that. But we see that club does get laid off in our opinion, but it's not necessarily laid off, it's just relative to the arms being lower that it appears laid off. Now here's the moment of truth. We're going to keep an eye on the hand position, and we will see that those hands do work in a pretty straight line, and we take a look at on the way back, they do go from low to high. You can see that. Is this technically an over-the-top swing? Well, yes, but every golf swing is over the top if you want to do it that way, because this first move, the hands have to stay on that lower plane line unless you are like a Matt Wolf or a Juju swinger where you get those hands way out to here. A majority of players start down here anyway. So at what length do you want to call this an over-the-top inside out? Technically it is, but technically tons of people are swinging inside out over the top and don't even know it. But what makes this swing work really well is that triangle check, and we can see those hands do follow the center of that triangle check much easier because it is flatter or shallower to begin with. So the more you can get the triangle check to be shallower, the less vertical your hands have to drop down to reconnect. So there are some positives to this, but again, it's going to just work for a similar build that can do this and hold those angles correctly. Now as we come on down into impact, we can see that right as we strike it, let's clear up all these lines. And this image really surprises me because there's not a lot of rotation right when he strikes the golf ball, which means to me that the hands and arms are moving at a much faster rate than the body. So they're the outside of the circle and they're trying to keep relative to the center of the circle. But right as we strike the golf ball, we keep turning at that same ratio. So it's a pretty solid move. But like every swing, it is all user bias. But I'm going to show you one more video, and we're going to look at a swing from 2012 from his YouTube channel, and we're going to look at his just neurological system because I don't know how far he was into the journey back then, but it's obviously a swing that's well over 10 years old, and we can take a look and see what we can find out. Okay, so right away, let's draw some lower plane lines and upper plane lines, and we're going to do the spine angle line. We're going to keep it in one color just to make things flow a little bit faster here. So it's still a little toe-based. Now, when you have a toe-based setup, naturally your arms want to work their way higher. That's at least my experience. When it's more of a heel-based, the hands would like to work lower just to keep you centered. And because the weighting's on the heels, it's easier to get flatter. So my suggestion for him is to get more heel-based. It might help his motions. But as we take that club back, you can see the hands are working slightly more up, but that club head is now on that lower plane. So we've seen him change that. When we get to the top of the swing, we can still see natural tendencies for him was to get that club flat anyway. So we do see the shoulder tilt loss is still there, and as a result the hands will get lower anyway. So this could have just been built into his neurological system from his swing. But again, I don't know how deep he was into his journey at this point. We don't see it as deep. So the depth comes from turn. So obviously nowadays we see him turning the hips a little bit more, which then will turn the shoulders a little bit more, which then gets that club to be more deep and closer to that primary plane line, which is what he's going after. But it's probably already built in his natural DNA motion. Because the club is not as deep, we see him trying to drop that club in the slot, but it's still suffering from the rotation, and we do see it a little bit steeper than it is now. But as we strike into the golf ball, we do see again that spine angle loss, which will then straighten out your shoulders, which again gets the club to work more inside, but it's not as effective because of the lack of turn that he exhibits here that he doesn't exhibit now. We do see the spine going in as well. Now I do have a bonus video. I just found it, so we're going to look at this because this is the only face-on that I could really find. He's basing the ball position off his left shoulder, and that's fine. That's your philosophy. That's okay, but we take a look at the shoulder tilt and relative to those hand positions. So we do carry a forward press based on the shaft lean. Now that shaft lean is going to have to make up somewhere. You either fall back or you don't. Now because he does not fall back, he actually stays on his left side. What this requires now is you're going to have some hand manipulation to make up for that angle, because he has moved even further over the golf ball and putting that golf ball even further back in his shoulder tilt. Watch the hand action here. So there's just a lot of hand action and squaring specifically there. So you see from here to here, that right hand really has to roll over pretty quickly, and you see the club head is definitely rolling over more. So when you don't judge your ball position correctly on your spine tilt, you're going to leave yourself up with a very timing oriented motion. And this is what I meant when I started the video, that he does have timing oriented motions. We can see that club is parallel to the ground, yet his shoulders have tilted out. You would like it to be somewhere in the middle of this position, so it might not seem like much, but that extra action of the hands could cause some misses that are left and right. So after looking at Christo Garcia's swing and the method he's built through Mind Swing Evolution, the big question isn't whether it works for him. It clearly does. The real question is, does it work for you? And more importantly, should it? Now this is just my personal opinion, but it's based on years of coaching experience and watching golfers chase every trend that comes and goes. Golf swing methods only apply to a small percentage of golfers. That's the truth. Most people won't tell you because methods are easy to brand and sell. But the real work is understanding your body, your limitations, and your natural tendencies. Just think of all the methods that have come and gone, like stack and tilt, one plane, natural golf, the golfing machine. I can go on, but most have helped a few, but never the many. Swing development has always come down to two tools, the club and the body. And while we can control the club, the body is unique to every player. We rotate differently, we load differently, and we recover differently. Tour history proves this. Furyk and DJ, Morikawa and Bubba, Hogan and Snead, all totally different because every swing is a compensation and every swing is bound by the player's ability. So what about this inside out move that Christo emphasizes? That was the solution in its time. Older clubs were heavier, more upright, and less forgiving. Players needed more arm action and less reliance on dynamic rotation. So before you go chasing Christo's swing, or mine, or anyone's, ask yourself, does this match your body, or are you just chasing something that looks good in slow motion? Christo's evolution as a player and coach is clear. He is passionate, he's studied, and he's helped people. But like all great swings, his success came from understanding what worked for him. You deserve the same. So swing your swing, not someone else's. I'll see you next time. Fairways and greens.